Because one thing that a traumatic cult does like this is it creates dissociation, right? You separate out parts of yourself. Like we did with our marriage, right? We dissociated and we're like, well, we can talk about dinner, but we can't talk about my career path, right? And that's a form of, so like speaking with a trained psychotherapist, you can like reintegrate all those pieces that have been
yes,
separate.
absolutely.
Like there's nothing like it. It's deeply healing.
We're rolling.
We're just kicking this off.
What is this podcast about, Charity?
John Robert Stevens.
The Living Word.
The Walk.
Hargrave Family Ministries.
Let's expand out into like things that matter.
Let's get it out. Let's get the story told. More time travel. More splits and witches and yogis and stuff.
And I remember sitting on our bed, like getting ready for bed and then sitting on our bed and Sam saying, that's it, we're leaving.
Good for you.
Like his first response was to protect me and to leave. And I wish to God we had.
It's actually kind of healing, coming back around and really digging in deep. And
traumatic at times.
You know, we try and balance all of that. You're going to watch as two former cult members try to de-dumbify themselves by doing a podcast about the cult that they were involved in their entire life.
Thought it was a church, turned out it was a cult. Oh, there's a good tagline.
That's what it is. That's it.
Oops, I'm in a cult. So welcome, Sam and Michaela. Thank you guys so much again for talking with us. You were on our properties episode and talked about your experience in Palmer Lake. But during that conversation, we got to talking about your experience in San Diego, which we would love for you to share here. I know that was really impactful on your lives as individuals and your marriage. And so you two were both born and raised in the fellowship, correct?
Yep.
And then the majority of your story takes place in San Diego.
Is it okay if we start where I was talking about last night?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I wanted to just spend like a minute, hopefully, just setting a little bit of context. And this is maybe for me, my side of it. And maybe this isn't, I don't know if it's going to be super popular among a lot of our survivors, but it's my truth. So I just want to say it. And up into a certain point, and we actually put a specific date on it when this abuse started. It was November 25th, 2009. I looked that up last night. I remembered it was the day before Thanksgiving, so I just went back in my phone. What was that date? Anyway, so the idea being, before that time, for me personally, I feel like I actually I had some good experiences in the cult. Yes, there were weird things, right? There was a lot of like toxic kind of undercurrent things that led a foundation for that abuse. But I would say because my parents were really dysfunctional alcoholics and I had a lot of trauma from that experience, I got to, be around like comparably functional adults, right? I know they were all in a cult too, which is really ironic. But there are people with advanced degrees and with successful careers, and I go, oh, I could be like them. And I had experiences like, learning to love theater and road trips and camping and like lots of things that are really important to me, who I am now, that were because of experiences that I had in the cult. And I just wanted to, preface that with that little bit of like, I'm not like, I don't think
you're trying to say that the good somehow balances out the bad.
Not at all.
Because it doesn't.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
But just, he's right. It wasn't all bad. I had more weird experiences with leadership prior to the abuse starting. And I think that's why we didn't walk away when it started. Because my experiences prior to that had been, hey, this part of you, I think we need to work on it because it's too strong. Always. That's always what it was. You're too strong. And you need to learn to bend or break or be the zero with the rim rubbed out, right? Whatever term or phrase they wanted to use. But always in that experience, the person who had done that with me, it was always done with love. And it was a short-lived thing. It was like, we're going to work on this for like, I don't know, I think at the most 3 months that it would be something that was worked on. And then it would be like, hey, nice job. Like, good, whatever.
And even if they were wrong about like the toxic idea of zero,
Sure.
it was still the idea that it wasn't, we never would have expected what was to come after November 25th, 2009.
Yeah.
Well, of course, and it also made it harder to separate up because like, I was like, well, there was all these good things, right? And so it was like, it made it even harder really in some ways to separate from it because I had positive formative experiences.
Yes.
I think that's really a common feeling that a lot of us had, where it's like you go, well, this stuff is really bad, but this stuff is good, right? And like you feel this internal conflict all the time because it would, if it were 100% awful, it would be much easier to walk away, be a no-brainer. And also, like, do you feel? Can I just ask quickly, Michaela, about when you said it was done in love? Looking back now, do you still feel that way? Or do you feel like it was more of like they're trying to change you, like in a way that like, instead of just accepting you for the qualities that you have, these beautiful qualities, and they're putting their idea on you of what you should be in order to be. So like, even if it was done nicely, so to speak, it's still like not, accepting you as you are.
Sure. That's hard to that's hard to tease out. Because I still think there is a lot of conditioning for me that my voice should not be strong and I should not be strong. Even though I am, and even though I know that is actually a really important part of who I am and a big part of the job that I do with advocating for, children. But I still do look at it and think it was done in love. Those people who were a part of that process prior have all come back to me at different points since everything fell apart and like deeply apologized for any part of it that might have been hurtful. And so, and I just think there are so many things, like Sam said, that we learned because of the training in the cult that have made us like really good at our jobs.
Yeah.
Let me finish.
Yeah, so go ahead. Yes.
Like the ability to feedback. Because we were raised to take correction and direction and be broken when it's given and not fight back or argue because you don't really know your spirit. Your mind and your emotions are not the voice of the Lord, so you shouldn't listen to those things. But because of that shit training, excuse my language,
it is what it is, right?
we're really good at taking professional feedback.
Because it's never that bad.
It's never anything
in comparison, right? Yeah.
No.
But there's the idea that sometimes you might not see something, right? And so just the idea that you can listen to something and you go, and listen, and then sometimes we can disagree. Like I've learned how to disagree with an authority figure, right? My boss, and like that took some healing and some steps, but I can do that.
And have a constructive conversation.
Right. But I think it's true though. I mean, there was something in there.
Well, and I think, and the more that we, we're both 20 years into education now. So the more that we go forward in our career, and especially Sam with going into administration, where he's having those conversations with other teachers, and my experience on working with other teachers too, and support staff, is that not everybody takes correction or that correction is like the worst word.
Let's say feedback.
I know what you mean though.
And so, so I think like the fact that our lens up until that point in November of 2009 had been like positive, like it doesn't feel good to be told it would be better when you walk into a conversation that you're quiet for a minute before you just open your mouth and blab, right? That's that thing I remember working on. But, and that's not a bad piece of life advice. So anyway, we never expected what happened to happen. And especially for me, because the person that this abuse came from had been someone who had been a friend and almost like a mother to me in San Diego because my family was not there. And she like took me shopping for my prom dress, and she would take me out for coffee, and we would go for walks on the beach, and like we'd sit next to each other during service because up until very soon before November, she had been kind of a persona non grata where she was never in the spotlight or the limelight and was very like disregarded and
never part of special
even
meetings, if they were in her own house.
Yes.
Right.
So, this was also that part too, that this suddenly came from someone who for 10 years prior had been somebody that had been very close to me.
Mm-hmm. That almost makes it more painful when it does happen because you're not expecting someone who you trust and who knows you and cares about you to do something like that.
Yeah.
And she had been so kind to me too.
Always kind.
Like random gifts or...
What was the switch? Why did this switch over?
She was put in authority.
She was designated as the one in San Diego to wear Marilyn's mantle.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
We know what that means.
Yeah.
We do.
So this was the instigating event of what happened. It was a Wednesday night service. And at that point, the young adult couple who had really been in charge had moved away. And we'd kind of been in a bit of flux. And a pastor that was long-standing in San Diego was put back in authority. And so we went back to having 6, 8-hour services,
Whoever could you be talking about? JM initials.
Yes.
JM.
No, the initials JM. And it was an interesting transition time, right? It was definitely weird. But then.
Oh, can I add a little more historical context? It's happened. This young adult couple that had been sort of unofficially in charge. They were never set in, but they sort of. And I know a lot of people had, like everything else in the cult, people had different experiences with these individuals. Ours was pretty healthy.
So honestly. Positive for me.
And I don't think that our relationship would ever have been approved had it not been for them.
I don't think we ever would have been allowed to date or marry if they had not been the ones who were
kind of in charge
at that point.
I mean, so it was kind of dumb luck. Some like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, for example, what we were talking about last night, we just happened to come of college going years at a time when a rare moment in time when we were encouraged to go to college.
Yeah.
Like before that, no. After that, we had Shiloh University, but that was it was
a
just
window in time. Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. Sometimes there's some survivor's remorse in that it didn't turn out as badly as it could have. Maybe
I think all of us have different levels of things.
But to go back to this couple that happened to move away the same summer in Shiloh, that I don't know if we remember this, the Caleb generation thing happened, which was also led by the same pastor with the initials JM.
Where it was this giant resurgence of our parents' generation coming back into their glory.
Oh, Lord.
What year? When was this? What year was this?
Summer of 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So everyone came back. So
back into their glory. They're supposed to take a back seat. They're like, no, never mind. We want to be involved. Yeah.
It was kind of like that, and just it was so weird. Honestly, why did it have to be one or the anyway? And lots of problems with that, obviously. So we came back from Shiloh that summer, and the second generation, our parents' generation type age group was hot to trot, ready to go. And then JM comes back into a position of authority, and it just, and trying to be weird on purpose, putting little fuzzy balls around.
And he also was going through.
What? Trying to be weird on purpose. What does that mean?
So he was also going through his divorce at that time. So there was lots and lots of messages about Mary and Martha and all of this kind of stuff and the female spirit and all of that kind of stuff. And so that was weird. So let's give some examples of weird on purpose. So he hated the big podium. So he had on wheels this little podium on casters, and he put or somebody put for him little hanging pom-poms around, and every time he'd bring the word, he'd like slide across the front of the sanctuary, and they'd play the lowrider. Like,
oh my God.
This is so like recently divorced midlife crisis dude situation.
But instead of buying a Porsche, he gets a podium with pom-poms on it.
And like for 2 months, we had to only wear blue to church because we were showing solidarity for Israel. Like,
oh my God.
That was this is all before November. So yes, this was weird, but I wouldn't say it was traumatic. It was just like,
no, it's just like,
and then of course, the brainwashing of like, oh, I better be on board with this, otherwise I'm not spiritual or whatever.
Right. And then GL was brought on to work with Jan, and like that she was given Marilyn's mantle. And so what had happened that night was a Wednesday night. Service had gone until the wee hours of, it was probably 11 o'clock, and we were still there because the service had officially ended, but you knew you weren't really spiritual if you weren't staying there to hear whatever other conversations and teachings were happening after
like
this.
an after credits scene in a movie. Like, stick around for the
lots of that happening.
And so by this point, Sam and I had been married for almost a year. We were both in graduate school together. We were both teaching full time. So we're teaching from 7 to 4, and then we're going to classes most nights from 4 to 10. So we had very little downtime, very little time together, and we were tired. So I was gently, maybe I wasn't, who knows, trying to get Sam to leave because I'm like, we need to go to bed. Like, this is like, we got to go to bed. And so
it's true.
Yeah, and it was true. We did need to go to bed.
It was the day before. It was the night before Thanksgiving. We were hosting the next day.
Yes.
Too. So it was just anyway. Yeah.
So GL like pulled me aside, and she told me, I don't remember all of it because it was so devastating, but she basically told me I was destroying Sam.
That's hyperbole, to say the least.
By trying to just get him to go home.
Yep.
Yeah.
That I was not supporting his authority, and that I was undermining him as a man of God, and I was destroying his ministry.
Mm-hmm. Sam, did you feel undermined as a man of God in those?
Jeez, crazy. No, as a matter of fact.
So let me
finish. Yeah, I want to answer your question. Because I think I want to add my perspective of that night.
So
you finish your story. We
get in the car, and I just start to like sob, probably in a way that he had never seen before from me, right? We dated for like a year and a half. We've been married for a year. We'd been friends for a long time, but I was like gutted. And I remember sitting on our bed, like getting ready for bed, and then sitting on our bed, and Sam saying, "That's it, we're leaving."
Good for you.
Like, his first response was to protect me and to leave. And I wish to God we had. I wish we had. But I sat there and went, no, surely she sees something in me that needs to be changed in order to be the woman of God that will be able to support your ministry. Right? This is what we'd been trained. And we're so newly married, and all we wanted, like in our marriage, was to be a ministry, to Sam to worship, me to work with the kids. Like, that's what we wanted. That's always been our heart, is to serve. I think that's why we do what we do professionally. That's just part of who we are. So I remember sitting there and going, no, it's okay. Like, she sees something that I don't see and that you don't see that obviously needs to be worked on. And that response came from all of those years of previous other like ministries or people in authority working with me on parts of myself that I thought had been beneficial. So,
yeah, I think that's really important. And thank you. I don't know there's actually anything else to be said, except I was clueless of anything, which is kind of funny too. But until actually, I remember we were walking down the hill from the sanctuary, sorry, I don't know why.
Honey, this is really hard.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just all the memories. Down the hill to our car parked in the lower parking lot. And that's when you started crying. And I was just like, what the? I mean, I thought like you were hurt. Like I thought like I didn't know what was wrong, but it was scary, right? And you wouldn't tell me, I think, until we got in the car or something. And then I just remember being like, what is she talking about? Like, not you, like GL. What is she like? I'm just like, because to answer your question, Scott, no, I was like, what? Like this is totally out of the blue. And so that's why I was livid. I was just livid. And like probably the weirdness of the preceding few months had just got me to a little bit off settled to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I was ready. And it's honestly our one regret, or the main regret, if you had to pick a time, is like that we didn't.
Yeah. That's a hard one, though. I mean, like I've got those moments too, and it's like, but we have to be kinder to ourselves, especially our young selves. It's like we did the best we could at the time, and like all those years from birth of conditioning that, like, if you leave, you're losing out on God, and you're losing out on the kingdom, and and bad things are gonna happen to you. So it's just like those things are,
yeah. It's also not just like those higher level things. It's kind of ties back to, I mean, it's definitely that what you're saying, Charity, like that is like in the back of your mind and so much of it, but like tying back to what you were saying at the beginning of, it's not all bad memories. When one dumb little thing happens, one like hurtful thing happens from one person, that doesn't negate, especially at first, all of the good stuff. You're going to leave your whole community, your friends, your family, everything you know, all of this stuff where you feel like you're trying to participate in the kingdom of God and building this huge thing because one person says something that hurts. Mm-hmm. No, of course you're not going to do that. You have so many good memories. You have so much good stuff to hold on to that you don't want to. It's like trying to leave a bad relationship. Like, oh, good, like you have lots of good memories, you have lots of good things, but like it's those bad things that start to pile up.
Well, because keep in mind, we didn't have any perspective.
Exactly.
So when you get those moments of like, we should just leave, there's not enough outside experience to justify that thought. And so then you'd brush it away, because it's not until you get some distance from that group that you go, oh, there was a lot more bad that was going on that I just was like not noticing.
As part of that, after service would be over, all GL would sit. She never would sit on the platform. She would always sit in the chairs. And all of the women would come and just sit around her after service. Sometimes she would talk.
It's Marilyn's spirit, Marilyn's mantle, or whatever.
Right. And I don't even remember her talking. Like, people would just sit around and chat. It wasn't something like, if it had been JM, he would have been giving you some kind of like sage advice, like, or right, whatever, and entertaining the crowd. But so one Sunday afternoon, I was like, it's already 1:30 and I have a paper that I need to write and we need to do laundry. So we left. And I texted her and I said, hey, we've got stuff we've got to do. I'm like, plus it kind of feels a little weird that everybody's just sitting around for an hour after church. I'd like to spend time with you, but not like that. Maybe we can go get a coffee, which is what we had done before. Like, it didn't seem outside of anything. And that, I think that was the beginning of the end.
So you were saying that you were friends with this female pastor, GL, before. And then how did she end up in a position of authority? She just got set into it, or was she getting married, or what? It was just out of nowhere?
That's a great question. And the short answer is we don't really know. But I can add, I mean,
like, with any change in leadership that would happen.
It was all
right.
Transparency or anything. However, this individual had been married to one of the principal pastors in San Diego
forever.
Well, yeah,
at that point, I think they were married for like 35 years. So
I don't know, long time. Mm-hmm. And in the whole thing of JM's divorce and resurgence, like she just kind of became like sort of like, for lack of a better word, but to put it in the terminology of the time, help me, an atmosphere, right, to JM in this whole part of his life. And so something about it just sort of
And they're not married at all, right?
No, she's married already.
Yeah, to the other one, but he is going through a divorce.
Right.
And so she kind of swooped in as like the balancing figure.
Yeah.
Even though they're not.
Even though they weren't
together.
And I
weird.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's weird. And whether or not there was anything else going on, I speculate. I have no idea, but I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I think it was just on the surface of what it looks like weird. If I'm trying to say something. Anyway, so she, and I wanted to say too, like, in terms of like you had a closer relationship with her than I did, but she was always very, very kind to me as well. And like, would get me a present on my birthday, without expecting it, or like, why would she do that? Or like, whatever, like just, when I got my first job in high school, a senior in high school, I was delivering pizza, and my very first delivery happened to be to their house. Like, it was really just random. And she invited me in and let me have a piece of pizza, and then like gave me a generous tip, like it was just like, so
that. She really did change when she got into a leadership role. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
It was
100%.
to the point where like you couldn't even hardly catch up with the difference.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yes.
So now we need to talk about fallout and what happened.
Yeah.
So, because I mean, it went on. Sam and I were talking last night for 5 years.
Yeah, it was about 5 years.
The abuse.
And it was hell on earth. I mean, there's no other way.
There's no other way to say it. So initially, what it looked like was I was taken out of helping with children's church. I was no longer allowed to help with. I had done some of the slides and audio for the booth, and I was taken out of that. And then I was no longer allowed to speak in services. I had to, if I thought I wanted to say something, I needed to first whisper it in the ear of one of the principal pastors, and they would make sure if it was in line with what was being said. And it never was.
Oh, and this is, as you remember, these times of like prophecy, right? When everyone's talking and it's like opened up. It's almost like open mic, right? Anyone could talk, but not her.
Right.
You needed to get approval on those. What did they give you a reason why you were being taken out of these positions and why you had needed to check in?
Because I needed to learn to break my spirit and put it under the covering of my husband.
That's gross. Like, I'm sorry, it's so archaic.
How come you weren't then checking in with Sam before prophesy?
This is where it gets really good. So, and I wish now we had known more of a foundation of the scriptures of marriage. Because I think had I known that, I would have been bucking the system a lot sooner.
And we're saying this from the perspective of we still identify as Christians.
Yes.
We found a healthy church community to be part of. And this was just part of our own journey after, post Shalom, right? If that's okay to say, I don't know.
That's what it felt. It's called PM.
PM.
Yeah. No, PS.
Yes. Of like, we went through all the things, right? Like I know I did, like, do I still believe in God? All this stuff. And we've settled on this. So from the perspective that we still believe there's value in the scriptures, I just wanted to clarify that.
So, and then the next piece that happened is that they started special Saturday morning meetings with young adults. And every young adult was invited but me.
Well, there was one
other person who
was probably on the spectrum.
And never really wanted to be involved with anything anyway.
He was in an odd duck and was happy to.
Yes.
Anyway.
To do what he was doing. So, and these were not hour-long meetings. These were meetings that went from 8 till noon or 1. Saturdays were already completely given to the church. You had what was going on in the morning, and then you had service in the evening, and then you had Sunday service. So, I mean, and I was not allowed. I was not allowed. And during this time, GL was not working with me directly. I was working with another couple that had moved from Minnesota and that we had been working with for years.
Working with, what does that mean?
Like they were our shepherds.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, and very, lovable, down to earth, have always felt their deep love for us.
And we're one of the ones that apologized.
Yes.
Afterwards.
Like, I mean, in an extremely broken way. Yeah. And actually before things fell apart, I think they apologized when we got ready to move from San Diego to where we are now.
Wow.
Anyway, recognizing it
I had
that
no idea what we were
part.
talking about at that time. All that
That's
to
awesome.
say, this other couple, we were fortunate, honestly, to have involved in our lives.
Yes. So at that point, the wife was like my shepherd, and she was working with me on feedback that she was getting from GL. And she was like, I think you're doing great. She's like, I don't see why this is an issue. Like, I'm going to talk to GL about it. So she would. And then she was promptly removed from being my shepherd because she was being
too nice to you.
Too sympathetic.
Sympathetic.
She was sympathetic.
It's called kindness. It's called empathy.
Realism.
So then her husband was put in that spot with me, and I would meet with him. We'd go on a walk. Like I'd meet him in a park and we'd go for a walk after work and we'd talk about things. And I still remember him like over and over saying it. And I just think it was part of him trying to cushion it in kindness, all of the crap that now I know was being fed to Sam and to him about me. Was he would share the story about how when he was in Minnesota, he had a pastor that was really, really terrible, really abusive, really horrible, but he gave himself to the direction and correction he was given as unto God, and God blessed him for it.
I've heard that one before.
We have. And so, because it was absolutely devastating for months on end to just hear that I was a totally shit person.
Yeah.
That there was nothing I could do right. I thank God for my job and for going to grad school during that time, where I was getting feedback from peers and professors and staff and principal and families that I was doing wonderful things, because the other side of my life, there was nothing. And part of the direction with all of this is that Sam and I were no longer to communicate with each other about anything.
That is insane.
What does that mean? Wait, were you married at the time? Or were you dating?
Yeah, they were married.
You were married. What is that? How does that direction come in?
And it's like, kind of like we could talk about like what we're going to have for dinner. Mm-hmm. Like we could talk about like, I don't know, like just like we were almost like roommates, right?
But you couldn't talk to each other about anything deep or real. Like what? What did you say?
Benefits.
I love it.
God, they never like got home because like I imagined that was like one line that was never crossed. But
yeah,
as far as like telling us things about that, but like we like couldn't like I could not tell her what was being talked about in those super special secret meetings on Saturdays. I could not tell her. I mean, like if I thought. Like I don't know. Like it was just like, here's a good example. Here's a great example.
You're talking about your job?
Yes.
Oh, this is a good one.
This is a perfect example.
Well, I do want to bring this up because this job example is literally, I think we'd already had the kids.
No, almost.
Oh, not pregnant yet?
No.
Oh, God. Okay, my timeline's wrong.
Almost.
Well,
I'm the historian.
Yeah. Definitely the date man. I do want to share, I am not a person who is at all prone to depression or even like sadness. I'm a very like positive, kind of very like the cup is always half full. We can always find some kind of positive piece there. And I think for the first time in my life during that time,
in the early days,
I experienced depression for like the first time in my life. Wow. Because Sam would be gone. There were other special meetings he was a part of where I didn't get to see him. Yeah. We were apart, and I was not being given any kind of positive feedback from anybody at that point, other than what was work and school related, right? Which is great. But you know, the way that we were raised, the bottom line of who you are and your value is what are you contributing to the cult?
And how do they feel about you? That's all that matters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. God, that's so lonely. You must have been so lonely because you're being
everybody, like all of my friends were no longer allowed to talk to me.
Right. It wasn't just
I was basically being shunned within the cult.
Yeah. You were being isolated and shunned.
Yeah. Leaving it altogether.
Yes.
And so like, so my time is being dominated on the weekends, and I can't even tell her about what we're talking about. Even if it's like planning some event, like I couldn't talk about it.
Doesn't it seem so weird when you look back on it? Just like if someone came to you and told you now, like, hey, this is going on in my church, you'd be like, run.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I believe this has a lot of value, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's hear your example.
Okay, so this is a few years into it. This is now, this is like the spring of 2011. Mm-hmm. And so I worked for the church full time.
For a lot of years.
Yeah. This was year 9, actually. So goodness, I mean, it was a long run. And it was because we had this, and it's like I wish like everything is so messed up because it was a school, but it wasn't a school, and it was like okay, fine. Anyway,
the church school.
It was it was the church.
Yeah. What was your job at the church?
I taught.
You taught. Okay.
Spanish, history, and drama.
And I right, and I was one of the few full-time employees. Like there were a lot of like.
And few credentialed teachers.
The only
worked
for the church. We did have this like partnership with the school district, and there were credentialed teachers that taught like the core academic subjects that actually worked for the school district, and 2 of those were members of the church out of 5. Anyway, but I was fully credentialed teacher, but I worked for the church.
And I'm just going to add in for years. I had been telling him he needed to stop because he was going into debt every month.
Yeah.
And his finances were fully submitted to his shepherd that knew he was going into debt every month.
Can I ask what they were paying you?
Oh yeah, $1,200 a month.
No. It was actually $2,000 a month.
Okay, $24,000 a year.
There it is. That's what
in San Diego to live in San Diego. Wow.
Yeah. Even 2009. That is not.
No, it was
no. I worked at the Apple store at that time, and that was a retail job at the Apple store. I made $10,000 more than you every year at a retail job.
And he had his master's.
And you had a master's.
I was finishing my master's.
Yeah, finishing it, but still.
And that's what was happening at the so. For better or for worse, I had committed. I'd already been working there for a while, but I committed this 5-year plan. Where the church would pay for my master's in exchange for me saying I'm going to work there for 5 years. So that was coming to an end, and we were finishing our degree. Mm-hmm. That was the year we got it, 2011, and it was time to say, what are you going to do next, right? And so I was pulled into a meeting about like, okay, you're coming to the end of your 5 years, right? And that was true, and I'd been already thinking, gosh, this time is coming. I had probably even asked for the meeting because I'm like, hello, like, what are we going to do now? Right, kind of a thing. I was actually going to ask for a raise. I thought I should ask for like a meager raise. I thought I would.
So, and I just want to put in comparison what the pay would have been if he had been working for the high school district in that area. He would have started probably at 65.
Well, actually, it was 48.
Oh, okay, 48.
And that's where I did start when I got hired by the.
Still twice.
But double what you were making it.
Mm-hmm. And it goes up very quickly.
Yeah, and that's with retirement and healthcare benefits.
Yes.
Which there was none of that.
So the meeting came about what to do. And I was basically given instruction, this was like March, I believe, to pray about it, but absolutely not to ask Michaela what she thought.
Not to ask your wife what you should do with your career. That is fucked up.
Well, 100%. This is a great example of like what we're talking about, how like we were allowed to like cohabitate, but beyond like, you know, like the minutia of daily life, it was like big things like that.
Yeah, like that's relationship stuff. Do you talk through those things?
Why? What reason did they give you? Did they give you a reason?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sure because they knew my input would be get the hell out of Dodge.
Which we've been saying that for years anyway.
It was financial suicide. We were going into debt.
And my only,
you know,
like real thing was like, well, I committed to 5 years. And you begrudgingly agreed. Yes. Okay. You did. So, you know, and I understand anyway. So this is actually great. It gets better. So I have this meeting. They specifically tell me not to talk to Michaela or include her in my thought process, that it needs to be my decision alone. And I remember this wording. This is going to be great. I will inform her of my decision.
Ooh, so patriarchal.
Is a gift. I don't deserve it. I mean, I shouldn't. I mean, I have to say too, I mean, I was stupid. I was young. I was trusting these
you were brainwashed
people to be doing what's best for me and us.
Elaborate on that a little bit. Like when you heard them say that you need to be this man that thinks that informs your woman or whatever it was, what was it that you were thinking?
Well, I remember it didn't sit right with me, but of course I had that initial like, really? But then the conditioning and the brainwashing to go and just squash that down. Like I need to listen to what they're telling me and not listen to my gut feeling of that feels icky. Like I don't like that. And
he'd already been like, here's the thing. There's so much of this that we didn't even know about what had been, especially being fed to him by GL during this time, that for years he had been listening to her yell at him about me.
Like
about how
scream,
like terrible
really
I was.
What would she say?
Do we even want to repeat it? Like
I want to the story about the job though, because
okay, good.
No, I know it's good, but I think it's important that part of the reason his response was what it was is for years he had been hearing this voice and squashing down his own thoughts and feelings about me to listen to her.
And so I want to give at least one specific example to answer that question, but so that we can stay kind of in this vein of the story, because it gets even better. So I decide I should stay, which I already know is she's not going to agree with that. But because of all this brainwashing, marriage meddling for now at this point, 2.5 years,
it was amazing. We were still married. I do think she was trying to get Sam to divorce me.
Well, they did that a lot, right? If you had one person who was like rebellious, so to speak, or that they labeled as having too strong of an opinion, right? Like, or if one spouse wanted to leave, they would tell you to divorce them. They would tell the loyal spouse to divorce them.
And then
happened all the time.
Control of that person that does that, right? Because they've given up everything.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Well, that's what they was trying to do to me. So to us, but to have that control of me, I was in some ways easy fodder, I suppose. No, I was. But anyway, so I made the decision knowing that's not what she would want. And boy, was she pissed, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't hold the thing against her, but she was, I mean, there's been very few things, despite all of this bullshit that we've experienced, very few things that have caused us to be angry at each other for days. And that was days, maybe weeks. Like it was a long time of like you being like pissed at me.
Obviously, because I don't remember it. So
good. Rightfully so.
Yeah, it's understandable. Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't hold anything against it because you have your right to be. So after going through all that, and then eventually I think you accepted it begrudgingly, knowing that there was not a damn thing you could do about it.
So let me just say this. So I would say it was about a year into the serious abuse that was happening and all of that I finally came to the realization that it was all bullshit.
Really? What brought you to that? That's great.
So,
Yes.
after I finished my bachelor's degree, that was when there was this whole resurgence and reconnection with this satellite church in South Africa. Do you guys remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as a little girl, I wanted to be a missionary in Africa. That was like what I wanted to grow up and do. And that was not something that we did, right? We didn't do any kind of outreach work. So I really connected with the daughter of the pastors from that church in South Africa and like the pastors themselves.
And she was about your age-ish, right?
No, she's
my age, I think.
Oh, okay.
No, really?
I think so. Wasn't she? I thought she was close to our age. Maybe not.
She just turned like 37, I think.
At the time?
Oh my God.
Oh.
Yes, I was just wishing her happy birthday on Facebook.
Wow.
So she's younger. She was 19 when she came over and did that like year-long stint.
Oh, that's right. Because I remember hanging out with her in LA. She was cool. She was kind of a bad girl.
So anyway, when they found out that my background was special education, they had what's called a criche at their church, which is like a school, but they had a school for kids with disabilities because in South Africa, children with disabilities are not educated.
Wow.
So they invited me to come out and help and like be a part of what they were doing. So over that summer between finishing my bachelor's and starting my graduate work for my credential.
At Shiloh. You went to Shiloh too.
I went to Shiloh after South Africa,
Right.
But yes. So I went out there for a month and was just fully immersed in their culture there. And while I was there, they were reading this book called Captivating by Stacey Eldridge. She's an author here from the United States. A Christian author. And it was like a life-changing experience for me to read that book.
And it was not Living Word.
Mm-hmm.
Doctrine.
And being away from the Living Word doctrine and
even though they like used it.
Let me finish.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So in that time that I was there, I had a very, very deep and personal experience with God that was like an unshakable piece of knowing who I am and how he thinks and feels about me. And I went straight from there to Shiloh for a month because I was helping to run the kitchen. And then I came home and it just kept building for me. And then Sam and I started dating and so anyway, so a year into the abuse, it's like I snapped, like I woke up where I just went, this is not how God thinks and feels about me.
Because you remembered that experience that you'd had.
Not remembered because it had always been there, but like I just kept waiting for this like discipline to break and for me back in that place, right? Mm-hmm. And and that's part of the reason for me that relationship when that young adult couple was in charge of the church was so healthy for me, because like their response to me whenever I would like want input about something or submit something, their response always back to me was, you have a relationship with God. You know his voice. We'll pray with you, but we're not going to tell you what to do. You come back and tell us what you think he's speaking. And,
That's great. Yeah.
So that's what I kind of kept waiting for, that place to come back, and it kept not coming. And I just went, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And I stopped listening. I stopped listening to what they were saying. I went through the motions, but I said to myself, if they're as spiritually perceptive as they say they are, they're going to know I'm not actually doing what they're asking me to do. Mm. And nobody ever came back and said anything.
What kind of things were they asking you to do?
Oh, just like living as that zero with the rim rubbed out, living in that place of thinking you are nothing without like putting yourself, basically it was like I would have to like imagine myself crawling inside Sam. That's where I'm supposed to live. Like, I mean.
That's a weird way of putting it, but it's true.
It's true.
Yeah. He's your covering because he's a man.
Right. So I finally reached the point, probably a year into everything, where I just stopped. I stopped taking what they were saying as the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going back to my Bible and my prayer life. And that is where I got what I needed. And that's honestly probably around also the same time that I stopped listening to Gary.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? What was that like if you were starting to feel this way and you were detaching from Gary and what they were saying and all this, but Sam's over here fully immersed.
he didn't
Like,
even notice.
Well,
yeah. I mean, he wouldn't, but
Well,
what
he
did
wasn't
you
allowed
notice?
to talk to you, so
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? It was almost like they had set this up so that she could do this. And it's true. At first, I didn't notice. But except I'd noticed that you stopped being so depressed all the time.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like a good thing. And I was getting sick and tired. If I had let myself feel anything back then, I was feeling sick and tired of every time I tried to say something positive about Michaela to GL, I'd be like, smack down.
Wow. Such a vendetta they had against Michaela.
Not just you're wrong, but like aggressively, like I'm sympathetic. I don't know, like it's just like I'm a piece of shit now because I'm trying to say something positive about her. So I stopped trying,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't. When you switched and stopped being like a shell of your former self, which was horribly painful to me, to see that, but not feeling powerless and helpless, and also like trusting the process, like there must be something good happening here.
Right.
But when finally that's changed, I'm like, that's something good. So I was kind of like I wasn't looking a gift horse in the mouth. And at some point I noticed that she wasn't listening to the CDs. And every once in a while I'd be like, we should listen to this together. And she would be like, nah, like not directly, but kind of just, we just wouldn't. Like, it would be like, yeah, we should, but then we just wouldn't. And I'd be like, what's going on here? And again, take this for what you will. But I actually did this. I in my own relationship with God, I was like, should I be concerned about this? And I distinctly remember getting the feeling of, nope, don't worry about it. Really? And I was like, okay. And I just didn't, because she was better. She was fine. We were in some ways, we were in a better place because, and so I was like, whatever. And so I just didn't worry about it.
So for me, like you asked Scott, like what that was like for me, that I was basically going through the motions of being a part of the cult, but no longer drinking the Kool-Aid. And what that was like in our relationship is I just was very deeply trusting God that we got married because we were supposed to, and that if that Sam was going to snap out of it or something would happen that would allow him to go free too. And that, I think that's what it really, like the bottom line, it just came down to really trusting.
How many years into the abuse from GL did this transformation happen for you?
For me, probably a little over a year. I'm trying to think. It was no, maybe more than that, because it was right around my 30th birthday. Mm-hmm. So March.
Yeah, it would have been March. Around the same time that this job discussion was happening. How about that?
Yes, I honestly think that was part of it too, is because I was so angry. And I had no one to talk to about how angry I was, right?
You certainly couldn't see a therapist. No way.
No.
Right?
No.
Oh, there's a story with that too.
And yeah. So anyway, so just
so that jives with this timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can I finish okay. So after putting us through a significant, like I would say this was a traumatic event of me deciding on my own and informing her of my decision to stay with the church beyond this 5 years, which was really 9 years, but it was the 5 years like special commitment. After all that, the school year finishes, and the next day I get pulled into a meeting saying, you can either go part-time or leave.
After I'd
gone through all of that, feeling that the Lord was speaking to me about staying at the church.
And here's my response when he comes home and tells me. I'm like, thank God, I knew something was going to happen. Because I truly did. When Sam told me that, and I was so angry, and I just remember praying and just like,
about my decision.
About his decision.
Yeah.
Because really the only person I had to talk to was myself and God at that point. And talking to God about it and just feeling this deep sense of, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And I can't say I didn't worry about it, but like at the same time, I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And that's what happened. And I just went, thanks, God.
It worked.
And it just, in retrospect, I'm pissed because how did they not know 2 months? I mean, yes, I know there was it was like there was no strategic planning. There was no like good leadership of any kind, but still to figure out 2 months later, actually, we can't afford to keep you on full time.
Was that meeting with them before or after graduation with our masters?
Right after.
Okay. So this is so good. So
now you're pregnant. We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
We don't know it yet.
But I'm pregnant.
And now, did you submit that pregnancy?
Oh,
Naughty.
Approved.
none of them were submitted, which gave me both. It was both terrifying and freeing because I'm like, oh well, here they are.
And you didn't even let Marilyn name your baby? How dare you?
No, that's another story.
That's a story with the anyway.
So anyway, so then Sam doesn't have a job. We don't know we're pregnant yet. We found out while we were at Shiloh, like after camp. But he doesn't have a job. We don't know what's going to happen, and then we find out we're pregnant. So, and honestly, the pregnancy, she started letting up on me once I was pregnant.
Huh.
Yeah.
So we still weren't really allowed to communicate with each other about anything, but her let up, which by that point I wasn't really listening to it anyway, but that was nice. It was like a reprieve.
Yeah.
And then the fact that when I was 6 months old, I got pregnant with the twins, all of a sudden, it was, and I really think in some ways our kids saved our marriage because having 3 babies in 14 months
Wow.
is intense.
Yeah.
And there was no way that we could have survived that without communicating with each other.
Yeah, makes sense.
So how did you get around the rule of not being able to communicate about important things?
We just did anyway.
You just did.
It came to the point where I'm like, we have to.
We have to. But it's not just us anymore. There's 3 small humans depending on the decisions that we're making.
Right.
And also that's kind of when things started to transition where GL was kind of being taken out.
Start slowly.
And a younger couple from Iowa was put into leadership, and then things kind of started to be healthier.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot for us.
So we're skipping over parts. There are absolutely terrible things that happened when we had the babies. I think we should touch on that. So things when the twins were born, they were in the NICU for 10 days, which is amazing length of time for babies.
Yeah, miracle,
they
honestly.
were learning to control body temperature and to nurse. So during that 10 days, people would come over in the evenings and stay while I was sleeping so we could go to the NICU together. I'd be there during the day, then I'd come home, and then Sam and I would go together again in the evening. And then after that 10 days, when they came home and
So to be clear, people from the church would come and help us.
Yeah.
Like babies, men.
They'd fold a load of laundry and
just kind of
bring us meals. Anyway, so then after that, my mom came for 2 weeks, and I wasn't told this. Sam was. So I'll let you share that one.
Right. I had forgotten about this until now. So yeah, this was lovely. I say that very sarcastically. So we were we needed, objectively, we needed help more than any other time in our lives, right? And we were getting it for a while, and it was kind of like what a community should do. That was a good thing, right? That was great and wonderful. But then somehow your mom coming changed something. I don't know. And when I went to say, okay, can we
No, she told you before my mom came.
Well, my memory of it is that it was maybe while your mom was still here with us. Anyway, I was like, okay, we need to make a plan for like when her mom leaves, right? Because we still need help. And what she told me was, and she brought in the name of this other couple around our age, but much better, these are people with like power careers and more money. Just and like that's fine. And like great, good for them. And we were friends. We loved them. And she said, well, this and they also had young children at the time.
3 boys.
This family can afford to pay for help. You can't, so you're on your own.
Ooh.
So they were saying they were just denying, because you had people helping at first, like from the church, and then they cut that off.
Yeah. And there were people that wanted to help. Like we weren't asking for help. These were people that were coming because they wanted to help, and so, and I was straight up told that you people offer help. You say, no, thank you.
Why though? Why?
Oh, I just think it was all a control thing. How much stress can we put you under before you break kind of a thing. And I thank God, like daily now, there were 3 people who wouldn't take no for an answer and just showed up. And one of them would show up and say, where's your grocery list? And did our grocery shopping for us every week.
That's great. Yeah.
And another person who just wouldn't take no for an answer and was there all the time. And then another young mom who, while we never talked about it, I think was in the same situation that I was with GL. Sure. She also had, young children. And she was being isolated, and she just would show up. She'd show up. She'd take lunch so I could sleep while the babies were sleeping, and like things like that. And that relationship, we never ever asked permission to like spend time together. But over the next like 3 years, that relationship with her is probably what sustained me.
Yeah.
And so,
like a genuine relationship that you didn't have to pass through your shepherds first to
and
make sure it was
that,
okay. Wild that would be a good relationship. So interesting.
Isn't that interesting too, though, that like leaders, like shepherds, by definition, they're to care for the flock, right? They're to take care of the sheep. And they did the opposite. And it was your friends who would be willing to go against the leadership and be a true friend. Like we all had to look out for each other because the leaders certainly weren't looking out for us. The opposite.
Being disobedient was ended up being better.
And I have to think about that story. What she told me still pisses me off to this day, because this other young family was very dear to us. But then that put like a wedge now, because I'm going, oh man, they can afford it and I can't. And it's just like, why did she have to say, like,
it's such a weird thing to say.
What was the point of bringing them into it anyway? Like just like all around
terrible
thing to do.
Mind games.
And it's all that control stuff. It's all of this. It's interesting because that story also relates to kind of what you're saying at the top, is like everybody in the community it felt like most people wanted a healthy community.
Yes.
Wanted the friends, wanted the church, wanted this stuff. And then it was the injection of these people seeking power and this like, or whatever, the beliefs. I mean, there's a number of different things, this injection of that, of like, let me take control over this. Oh, there's people that want to come over and help their friends who have newborn babies. No, I'm going to control when we can give that and when we can't. We've heard the other stuff like that. I know a lot of people did, in my experience, they would help people move or like make food or donate this or whatever. But it was the leaders that got to decide who they would promote, when they would, tell people through the shepherding system, like, don't help them because they're
people with cancer. I mean, we heard that out of this from, I believe it was about GL, the same leader you're talking about, how she was telling people to refuse help to a woman who was dying of cancer. Yeah. Refuse to take her to her chemo, refuse to do anything for her. It's absolutely psychotic.
100%.
And I mean, so then we're not allowed to accept help. We get through, we work through it. But yet at the same time, Sam would, I brought the babies home from the hospital and he was expected to be at service the next day.
Well,
what?
Yeah.
Actually, and not just at service.
I was given the first one because we came home on a Saturday night, I think. And I think I was given that Sunday as like this generous, like,
But he was expecting, they were pissed he wasn't there Wednesday playing.
that was the first one where she let up on you, but she did not let up on me. And I would say we came home with him from the hospital on a Sunday, and I actually took that week off of work. Wednesday night comes around, and I'm like, I'm not going. I want to be home with my newborn baby and my wife. I want to do this. Boy, did I get an earful for that. I mean, like, I was ripped a new one for staying home 3 days after we brought home our first baby.
That's so
like,
sad.
And it's just like, and that's what I mean by hell on earth, right? Like I could do no right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and then like through all of this time, Sam was the only one that GL wanted to have playing the piano. We had other pianists.
Yeah, at least
it was
2 other very talented ones.
Yes, very talented.
Better than me.
And she only wanted him.
Do you think that was punitive, like towards you, Michaela? That just
so.
Yeah.
But I mean, to the point that he had to have double carpal tunnel surgery done
in both my hands,
in both his hands, because of those 6-hour services that he was doing, like 3, sometimes 4 times a week.
Wow.
And I was it, right? And it was like, and I was made to feel like any minute it could be taken from me.
So better be thankful.
And then I wouldn't have any value anymore. Like my value was in being able to do that, not in being a husband, but in doing that. And so I was scared
Everything
to screw up at some point, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to be told, no, you're not on today. Because that could happen. And it did happen to people. And I was terrified. I was living in constant fear that that was going to happen.
Yeah, so they made sure of that, didn't they? Yeah.
And dominating of my time, it made me want it. Like that's like pure gaslighting right there, right? Isn't that
right? Well, and this is, this is the awesome part of services, right? Is that he needed to be there at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half before service started. So I'm left alone with 3 babies to get them ready to go to church, because I was also expected to be there, right? And we lived in the neighborhood, so I would load them all up into a stroller and push them. Drax, no bark. Push them to church, and then I'm unloading 3 babies, and I would carry 2 in the front and 1 in the back, or it's just ridiculous when I think about it. We did have a
rotating schedule of people who would hold babies with you.
That's true. They were allowed to do that. I could have people who would volunteer to hold a baby during service.
Wow.
So,
how helpful. Of all the things
something for them to take away from you later if they decide that they need to punish you in some way.
And I'm thankful for that, because it let me be with. That was the only time I got to be with just him,
Your oldest.
during those. Yes, my eldest. That was the only time I was able to be with my eldest. So I'm really thankful for that. It gave me a moment with him, because, the twins were so little, they basically slept through service in somebody's arms, But
it doesn't work as a cult to just have bad things all the time. Podcast is could be titled All the Bad Things That Happened in the Living Word and Only the Bad Things, because that's kind of how we talk about stuff. But you need the good stuff. You need the community in order to attract people, to keep people. That's the selling point, is even the things that you're trying to work on yourself, the way they're critical and they're bad things, but they're framed as a way of becoming a better version of yourself, getting closer to God, doing these kinds of things. All of that is the whole message, the idea behind it is supposed to be positive. So people come in with hopeful intentions. And what makes it bad is that then they use that against you to make your life worse for their own benefit or whatever. I think it's important to talk about those good things where you are allowed to have people come and help you with your kids, or the community that shows up when you're moving or making you food during this event or that event, those positive things. It's important to talk about it, because that's what everybody's trying to create. Right. It's just then, like John Robert Stevens would say, rat poison, where it's the 2% poison that you're putting into it. The rest of it's healthy, but that little bit is the leader that they put in charge at the church.
Right.
That we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well,
I
and
think
then
that's-
and then when she was phased out and the young couple from Iowa was brought in, things suddenly started to change in a very drastic way.
For the better.
For the better.
For us.
For us. And I'll never forget, like, I was very hesitant, right, with anybody at this point to like let anybody in that was a part of this, because it had been really horrible.
A long 5 years.
Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget, she had come over because she had, her youngest was around the same age as, so she'd come over for like, as
Her youngest
was about the same age.
It's fine. It's fine.
Right.
And she'd come over for like a play date, and we're sitting on the couch, and she turns to me and she said, you know, my husband and I are praying for you guys because we're really concerned about like how you're making it. And I'm like,
Financially.
yeah. I'm like, what?
What?
You're thinking about us?
You're concerned about
You're
us?
concerned about us?
You're praying for us?
For us? What?
That was...
And I told her, I said, well, you know, I said, my parents are in Colorado, and my grandparents own a house that they're not living in because they've gone into assisted living. And my parents keep telling us, come out, like move out here and you can inherit this house, or you can rent it and then inherit it, or inherit part of it and buy something, like come. And she looked at me and she's like, why wouldn't you do that? And I went, because we were straight up told we were never allowed to think about moving there.
Yep. By GL. That was one of the things that happened when you got pregnant with the twins, is she pulled me into a room and she was like, I suppose you're going to want to move to Colorado now, and told me just how miserable I would be here. And the pastors here were awesome, but you're going to be miserable.
Because of my family.
What's your family?
Yeah, they're a little bit.
Yes.
But, you know, it's family.
Right.
Can you learn how to, can you learn how to have a healthy relationship with your family, or just cut them off? Like
Right.
that was,
Yeah, you should just cut them off and just live in the cult and like live and die by the leadership.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
that's
that's what they want.
that's kind of what that says, is like they move in a new leader, and even though they're suggesting something that's positive and good and all of that, your life is being dictated by the leadership. And if they're terrible, then your life is terrible. And if they're good, then like your life is good. And there's no like autonomy. There's no ability to choose like, well, what's better for us and our family?
Right.
It's all about the living word.
Yes.
Because even like part of the reason that like Colorado's a good choice is there's a church there.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
yes,
Right?
that's true.
Yes.
And I mean, in my little cult boy brain at the time, I would never even have like considered it if it was like Nebraska or South Carolina or somewhere where there wasn't a church, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so they started to pray and we started to pray, and 6 weeks later we were here with jobs.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
And
right.
it is so interesting to me that, again, like the disregard, the lack of genuine care for people that so much of the leadership had.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have 3 children under 3. Is that right?
If we had
And
300
you're
at that point, 300
trying to survive on teachers' salaries in San Diego when you have this other opportunity just waiting for you, is like wrapped up in a bow practically. And they don't think about what's right for the individuals. They think about what benefits the church, not the people. It's always the mission was always put above the people. Whatever the fuck the mission was,
Right.
I don't know. Still waiting to figure that out.
Yep.
That's a great point.
Yep.
And it's also I think it's a great example of how leadership was so volatile and dependent on the individuals who were there.
Yes.
Because again, like you said, Scott, you could have relatively healthy, there was always weirdness regardless, right? Like the expectation that, it's still the bottom line. Okay. Yeah. That was weird and that was wrong, but it could be relatively okay depending on who it was. And it could be hell on earth depending on who it was. You were completely
And it
at the
could
mercy.
be different for different people under the same
Right?
Yeah. That's true.
That's what was so crazy making, honestly, was that it was just perpetually off balance. You were perpetually off balance, never knew what to expect from one day to the next.
So then we moved here and we had a very, very different experience at the church here, which we've talked about. But I think one thing that's really important is the eye opener for us that happened. I don't know. How long had we been here when that happened? It was
not long,
like
a
month,
two.
maybe 2. So there was another older couple that had moved here from San Diego ahead of us. And we were at a party at their house because their kids were visiting from, or one of their kids and family were visiting from the islands.
People get
and Sam had a conversation with the older gentleman of the couple. And your turn.
Well, he was sharing their experience, which was extremely similar to our experience, where
San Diego.
Yeah, where she had been cut out. She had been actually she had held some actually very important roles in leadership, not like pastoral leadership, but still leading the different parts of the community, and was abruptly cut out, traumatically cut out for me because I had been actually pretty close to that, and very much like this, where you're shunned without leaving, all the things. And I start, and he was presenting it in a way of how pissed off he was about it. And I was going, is that even okay to be pissed about it? And then I started it threw me into a whole bunch of cognitive dissonance because I really trusted these people a lot. And so it meant a lot to me that they were feeling things, right? And how wrong that was. And I went to the pastor here and I was just trying to help him, have him sort out my thoughts. Cause that's what you did, right? Externally, not internally. And he goes, what does Michaela think about it? And I go, what do you mean?
I'm not allowed to ask her.
Yes. And that's what I said. And then he said, the pastor told me, do not come and talk to me unless you've talked to Michaela first. And I was like, right?
Wild, mind blown.
But it was what?
So here's the difference between San Diego and here for us, right? We just came to church. Sam didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. We just brought our kids. We showed up. We went to church. And then slowly over time, Sam started doing a rotation for music.
But it was very gentle.
I started helping with the kids.
It was very gentle demand.
We bought a house. And after we bought the house, we realized we hadn't asked anyone for their input.
And you didn't get in trouble for it.
Oh,
and that wasn't a problem.
It was fine. They were happy for us. I was like, what? It's okay. We just made an adult decision. Something adult. Oh, okay.
Well, that's part of what's so crazy making too is I remember some shepherds would be like, you didn't submit this, you subnounced this, you're out from under you're disobedient, da da da. And then other shepherds would be like, oh, we're so tired of people asking us what to do. Come to us with your way. And I'd be like, what? Okay, wait, what do I do?
Oh my gosh. So, I think the fact that, and so we did move to Colorado 3 months pre-letter.
No, not 3 months.
3 years, sorry.
I'm like, whoa, honey,
3
no.
years. Wrong unit of time. 3 years, and those 3 years were night and day. And it's the only reason why I think, but
wait,
there's the thought I want to finish this. So. And I would say this too, it was one of the reasons why we stuck around until 2018 was because we had such a better experience. First, under the young couple that moved to San Diego, which was about 6 months-ish, maybe not that long, 4 or 5 months before we moved to Colorado. And then the experience in Colorado, night and day. And we're like, okay, this is really what it's supposed to be like. And
well, I wouldn't even say that we thought that because we did a lot of not a lot, but several individual meetings with the pastors that were here in Colorado around the marriage meddling piece, us sharing what had happened, all of the trauma around that, and them really supporting us in essentially reestablishing our marriage. And in a lot of ways, healing it and falling in love again. And I just remember many times saying to them, but I'm really angry. I'm really angry about the time that was robbed from us in our marriage. And them saying, well, but yes, but be thankful that you're reestablishing it now. And really being led to believe that what had happened was a San Diego problem.
That's what I wanted to say. Was
not something that was systemic or, cult wide, but a San Diego problem. And we were really led to believe that. And we did. We did believe that.
I thought, sure, it must be because it changed when we had the young couple come to San Diego and it was different here. So I'm like, it must have been a GL problem, whatever.
Right.
And so when Shalom's letter came out and I was like, and people started sharing their stories and we're like, oh, wait, yeah, we experienced that and we experienced that and we experienced that too. And it's like, oh, wait, this was actually systemic.
Yeah.
It was not an isolated issue.
And that it was never, and I just know for me, because lots of people, and we talk about in this, wanted to move forward. And I just went, there's no way. There's no way.
Move forward as
an individual church
here
in Colorado.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way. We have an entire lifetime of conditioning of the way that we think about leadership and the way that we think about relating to one another that is not healthy. And there is no way that we could move forward. We need to just take ourselves and spread ourselves out into other churches or not,
or whatever,
right? Or
no
whatever
judgment
you find
whatsoever.
But that we cannot do that together,
which is really insightful, because you need to get out there and experience other ways of thinking and ways of living and get any kind of perspective. How has it been for you, recovering from all of that? And I mean, as individuals and in your marriage?
I think that we're thankful for the work that we did ahead of Shalom's letter with each other. Because really, the pastors here, we met with them 2 or 3 times, and that was kind of it. And they were like, you guys just need to be together. And that's what we did. And
again, that was a part of the space that they gave us at first, where we weren't expected to serve or do anything, which was also a real mind bender, because I'm like, what? You mean we have value and you love us even though we're not doing anything?
Right.
That's huge. Yeah.
And that was tremendously healing. And the fact that it just gave us that space, and then.
And if kids were sick, both of us could stay home.
Oh, that was one of the biggest. When the kids got sick in San Diego, you better believe I still had to go to church.
Even if I had 3 sick kids at home.
Yeah, there was no excuse for that. For me to miss. Right?
There's no sick like baby sick.
Yeah, you know that. Anyway, but that here it was like, oh sure, yeah, just do what you need to do. Each other.
And not only that, people would show up with a meal. Hey, we hear you guys are sick. Here's dinner.
So
and how's church are you now? You guys go to a non-affiliated Living Word?
So
of course not.
So we did not for a very long time, right?
It took
5 years, I think. Because
close to 5.
Are we coming up on 8-year anniversary for the letter? Yeah. So 5 years. We did not set foot inside of a church and didn't really want to.
We did go to a mega church once.
Oh, yes. And that was really cool because you're you're just a face and nobody even knows who you are.
But it was still very...
oh my gosh.
Anonymity.
Yes.
But we didn't really like
it. Some of our compatriots had been going to this. And so we're like, we'll try it out. But we weren't ready. I mean, it was an interesting experience. We were like, eh.
Yeah.
So
really, the real reason we went is because one of the twins, one of them loved red and the other loved blue, and this mega church had a blue roof.
Still does.
So every time we'd drive by it, he'd say, "When can we go to the church with the blue roof?"
The blue woof. That's so cute.
So we did.
So we finally went to the church with the blue woof.
Anyway. But the boys really started expressing a want, because even though we weren't going to a church, we very much still had like a family altar. We still prayed at meals. We read the Bible with the boys. You know, we worshiped with them, sang with them
Before bed.
And so they were expressing a want to be baptized.
Well, and a friend got baptized.
Yes, a friend. And we also had, during this time, one of our boys became best friends with a little boy whose family is Mormon, and they're super kind and wonderful. And so,
but it's like the baptism is like a thing. It's not a party. It's like a thing that you invite friends to. It's like part of their thing, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, so we went and did that.
Mm-hmm.
And then our oldest was like, I want to be baptized. And we're like, okay, so now what?
And so I had been, my piece, if we were going to go back to church, is I wanted something that was incredibly structured. Like that had like
traditional
and bylaws and like scripture based. And like, if something was going weird, you could come back and point to what they said they were doing and say, hey, I don't think this lines up.
And like you check
Explain,
some balances,
you know,
governance,
so like
transparency.
I was like thinking Catholic, like, I'm like, let's go back to the, but
I want 2,000 years of history and rules and precedent and a pope we can go talk to and then a council of...
but I had a really good friend at work who had raised her kids in a Lutheran church that's in our community. And so we just decided to try that. And Sam was definitely not on board. He did not want to do it.
So I was just actually thinking, I was talking with Karina this morning about this actually.
Our hairstylist.
Yes. And I was like, because I told her we were going to have this, and she asked me, what are you going to do today? I was like, we're going to have an interview about our cult that we were in, because she knows. Anyway.
Yeah, I talked to
yeah, she's an open book. She's like, by the way, we were in a cult. And I'm like,
I love to do that now. I'm like, yeah, I was raised in a cult.
I'm not as open about it. But anyway, about how like after Shalom's letter, you know, I went through all the things of like, do I even believe in God? Right. And I think that was healthy and that was right. And I don't think there's any problem with that whatsoever. No. And actually kind of working through that and then getting therapy, secular therapy, which I think was very good because we first started with a sort of Christian. And that
he was not a good therapist.
We talked about
they're out there.
There's a lot of them.
Anyway, this is a good one, a very good one. Mm-hmm. So that was super helpful. And well, what's interesting is that this is a very Christian community. And so even though the therapist is secular, she was still a Christian. So sometimes she'd kind of just bring that in and a little bit, and I think in an appropriate way. And it just started getting me to thinking about it. And then I finally kind of decided, yes, you know what, this is a deep part of who I am. So I still believe in God. I'm a Christian, but I'm done with church. No, thank you. Not interested. I put in my time. I'm good to go. Let's move on with our lives. And then she sort of drugged me to this.
I didn't drag you because this is
slightly. No, I did go willingly.
Because I said I don't want to go without you.
Right.
I'm not doing this without you. So if you're not ready, we'll just let the kids know we're not going to do it yet. And so he agreed to go once, and we just kept going, but like not consistently. And when we showed up, people were happy to see us. When we didn't show up, nobody asked us why, you know.
And I want to say something about our first time to in this church, because it's part of we've learned about the Lutheran church. There's like 3 different sort of
branches.
Yeah, sects or branches of the Lutheran church. And 2 of them are relatively conservative and 1 is relatively liberal. We showed up and so this church is part of the ELCA, which is the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. And even though it's got the word evangelical in it, people are always like, but it's not, it doesn't have anything to do with like what you think of as evangelical. Because it is definitely a more liberal branch of Christianity, which what we needed. I'm not saying that's what everyone needed, but just where we came from, we needed that. And so what I thought was interesting, a couple of things. We show up and they have this beautiful piano, but no one was playing it. And I'm like, I just got this feeling like I could do that. Like, what the hell am I thinking? Like, I'm not like, I don't want to. Like, I'm done. I'm thinking that's not ever going to be a part of my life again, right? But I'm like, I could do that. And it turns out they had a pianist, but she just wasn't there that day, because you can do that
in a normal church.
And another thing that happened was this Spanish-speaking family showed up looking for like financial help, because they said they were going to be evicted from their apartment and they needed help with. And I was the only one there that spoke Spanish that could help. And I'm like, I can help. And all of a sudden I'm like translating for the pastor and this Spanish-speaking family. And they're taking them seriously. They're not just like, get the hell out, right? And that they give them gift cards for groceries and gas and stuff. And I'm like, what? Like that spoke volumes to me, right? And I just happened to be there in the middle of it. And then we see.
So on the bulletin board, as you go back to the bathrooms, there was a gingerbread person on the board. That talked about sexual orientation and gender identity and pronouns and all of that on that board. And I just remembered standing in front of it and going, if they're creating a safe space for this population, we can be safe here.
That's beautiful. Yes.
We share that with a lot of people, because even though that's not like our identity, we go, if it's not like safety and inclusion is not like a pie where you give a piece away and now there's less, right?
Right. Yeah.
Inclusion and safety for one person, that's for everybody. Mm-hmm. And then there was like a few months later, there was a young man bringing them. He was bringing the message. Mm-hmm. He was the sermon, and he says at one point, "My husband and I." And I just went, did he just say my husband and I, like over the pulpit? And I went, okay, like this again, like, okay, this is a thing. This is a community we can be part of.
That's really beautiful. Yes. Because that's really like, if we're going to go around saying we're Christians,
right.
I mean, wasn't Jesus's teachings to like love and accept everybody? And yeah. And there are so many churches now that are doing that, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. I remember first moving to Seattle and seeing like Lutheran churches with the gay pride flag outside and saying everyone is welcome. And I was like, that is so wonderful. Because, our church was like, no, you're going to get kicked out.
Yeah, right. Even if you're Marilyn's daughter.
Even if you're Marilyn's daughter. Exactly. You know where I was going with that. That's really beautiful.
It is really interesting to see churches that are inclusive instead of like adding to the community, adding to the flock. Like, yesing everybody instead of, which is what the Living Word would have done, which is like, let's try and cull the flock and get it down to the remnant and just the core, only the best of the best of the best, or whatever. Yeah, over the 60 years, it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And like, it's the smallest it could possibly be now.
Almost, so it's barely there.
That is like a very interesting contrast. And it's really interesting too, your experience is so many different versions of what it can be like to be in a community and in a church, even within the Living Word, at different churches and different pastors in the same places, and seeing like what that kind of thing creates. And I don't know, it's really interesting. It shows how much like it's really up to us to like make a good place, and the people kind of do that.
Right. Well, and that was my takeaway, because I still remember when Shalom's letter came out and not being surprised, right, at the level of everything, still being devastated, just so broken and devastated over hearing and reading everyone's experiences and going, my God, if we only could have spoken to each other, right? If we hadn't been so trained that we don't share with one another what we're going through. But just really like crying out to God on like, please explain this to me. Like, how is it that all of these wonderful, beautiful little people were a part of this, but yet this was a terrible thing? And just walking away from it of like, God is faithful to his word, right? Which is where two or more are gathered in my name, I'm there. Because he was. I think there are many, many stories from many, many people that experienced, had deep experiences with God through all of the shit. But he was there not because of the leadership, but in spite of it. And I know that that's just given me
a very different perspective on many different things that you look at, because we are not unique in the abuse and all of the pieces in the cult. There are so many. I just listened to a podcast about the Heaven's Gate community. Mm-hmm. And there were so many parallels as I'm listening to that with the Living Word. Yeah. You know, like they recorded all of their conference, like it's all on tapes and CDs, and you know.
What is it about that? Like, why do we
I don't know.
Something about the narcissist side of it. It's like everything I say is so amazing that it needs to be preserved for future time, for future, posterity or whatever.
But I just go, you know, it is not because of leadership that God was there. He was there because of the hungry hearts of people.
But the problem, and I think that's really important to say, because we were taught the opposite was true. Mm-hmm. That God was with us because of the covering of our leadership. And really, you guys aren't enough yet. You're someday you'll make it. And in fact, the very last, I don't know, comes to mind, the very, very, very last CD that I ever got, and I think it was the last one that was ever put out by the Living Word. I can't believe you listened to all of them. I did. I listened. And it was the last one. And I hadn't heard it yet. And Shalom's letter came out. You know what? I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to pop it in. I'm going to listen to it anyway. And it was not Gary. It was someone else speaking in LA. And that's something that he said. He said, you guys just aren't there yet, but you're going to be. And I remember listening to it. It was actually great. I'm so glad I did, because now this is post Shalom. And I'm like, fuck you. I never got to say that in response to his CD before.
It felt good, right?
It felt good. So I'm glad I did.
I love that. Well, I think that is the perfect way to end this. And I love it. We can all just say a collective fuck you to Gary Hargrave and all of the
the congregation said, fuck you.
Fuck you.
Thanks for listening to Oops, I'm in a Cult.
Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at Oops, I'm in a Cult Podcast.
Support us on Supercast by visiting our website at oopsiminacult.com to subscribe and receive exclusive bonus content.
Or email us at oopsiminacult@gmail.com.
Take it easy and don't join a cult. If you or someone you know has a mental illness, is struggling emotionally, or has concerns about their mental health, there are ways to get help. Use the resources linked in the description to find help for you, a friend, or a family member.